Well, hi, wherever you happen to be, and welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. Today, we are going to have a chance to chat with someone that I met a little while ago because he runs a podcast and invited me to come on, which we did. And it'll be out in a fairly short time. He is Will Polston, and Will is a best-selling author, an entrepreneur, and a leading business strategist and coach in the United Kingdom. So we're really wow, that's a lot, a lot of things to live up to. So I got to be careful in what I say. But anyway, Will, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Well, I look forward to having a lot of fun. Why don't we start, as I love to do? Why don't you tell me something about the early Will growing up and all that?
Wow,
I know
the
that
early
could take an hour, right?
we've got a long time. Yeah, do you know, I'll tell you something I've never said on a podcast, and I think this is really interesting. Was that many years ago? So when I was when I was really young, there's a TV program that's over here called Fireman Sam, and I always wanted to be a fireman. So when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I was forever dressed up in a fireman's outfit. Then I got a little bit older, and then I wanted to be an architect. And then I went on to be a paperboy. And I tell you why I thought that was really interesting when I first realized that was because fireman, what was it about fireman? It was about helping people. An architect was about designing things, and being a paperboy was sharing information. And now I work as a coach. I think it's a combination of all those things. I
It
help people
is.
design their life. I help them, and I share information. So, but no, that's kind of that's something that was the case for me years ago. But there's an extended version, I suppose, of what actually happened, which led me to do what I do now. Which, if you want me to share, I'm happy to. But
Oh, you're
up to you.
welcome to.
So the short version is I grew up with a belief that money equaled happiness, and I went off on a tangent to make as much money as I could as early as I could, and then it was and I've become pretty good at that. And then it was 11 years ago, I had what I call my lightning moment, where I realized my real driver was nothing to do with money. It was never really about money. It was all to do with my dad, and how my dad hadn't achieved certain things he was capable of, and the impact that had on him and my mum and me and my family. And I vowed I don't want anyone else to have to go through the pain that he went through and we went through as a result. And from that moment on, I've just been obsessed with anything to do with human awareness, human potential, and human behaviour to enable people to do exactly that, achieve what it is they're capable of, and benefit not only them but their family, their friends, their community, society, humanity, and the universe. Which, as a result of having an unstoppable mindset.
Hmm. When you talk about the pain that he had, what do you mean by that?
So the slightly more detailed version is my dad worked in London, and he hated his job. So he would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, come home at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and he'd bring the stress and frustration of work home with him. And I don't know if people listening to this can relate to this, but he had so much tension that
Mm.
when he would walk into the house, you could physically feel it.
What
Anyway,
kind of job?
he was in IT. He was
Okay.
head of IT for a stock brokerage, and
Ah,
yeah, that was stressful for him back then. But I've also got two very wealthy uncles. One's a billionaire, the other one's a multi-millionaire. And Dad always used to say they just got lucky. That was his excuse. They got lucky. They got lucky. And what's interesting is even back then, I was at 10, 11 years old. I used to think that's odd. I can't believe it's just luck. And even now, I don't believe in luck. But yeah, he used to say that. And one day I came home from school, and my dad had quit his job to set up a business with one of my uncles. But that, long story short, that never got started. My dad fell into a depression, slept in a
mm,
separate room with my mum, curtain shut all day, didn't leave the house, all the stereotypical stuff. And what I observed as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old was there was Uncle Mark. He was a billionaire. He was really happy. My Uncle Steve, he was a multimillionaire. He was really happy. Then there was my dad when he worked in London. All right, he was stressed and whatnot, but he had money. And then there was now he hadn't worked for months on end. He had no money, and that was what I witnessed. I witnessed the depression, the feelings of depression, the stress, and all of that. That was the pain, essentially.
why did he hate his job?
Well, I
Mm.
think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Whether it was um, whether he hated it or not, or whether he just didn't have the skills to handle the stress. I think that for a lot of people, why is you can look at one person doing one thing and it's so easy for them and so difficult for somebody else and they get
For
stressed
somebody
out.
else,
I think it's having a skill set to be able to do what was required. Maybe it's that. But because he likes computers, he's always liked computers, but maybe it was just not in the way it was being done.
Yeah. Now, is he still with us?
Yeah, he's still with us.
Is he working now, or?
He's working now, and yeah, he's probably happier than he's ever been.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah, in a much better place.
What does he do now?
He's involved with architectural glazing of all things. So he basically prints these stickers that go on windows that are required in construction, so that people don't walk into glass doors and whatnot.
Well, that won't help me, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But, well, so obviously all that had an impact on you. And so what was it that finally made you realize that, well, one, you didn't want to live that kind of life, but that you really recognized that there's a whole lot more to life than money, and there is something to be said for having peace of mind?
Well, what happened? There's a chap that you may have heard of called Tony Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
He's from your side of the pond, and I was at one of his events, and he shared what's known as the Thanksgiving story, and it was like the perfect metaphor for my life, and it made me realize, wow, if that experience was able to shape that man, as in that man being Tony, to do everything that he's done and the way he's helped people, then maybe that's what it is for me too. It's that. It's that catalyst to change and do things, and that was that moment.
So up until that time, what were you doing? So I assume you went to college and so on?
No, not at all. So
didn't go to college?
I was just obsessed with making money, frankly. So because we didn't have money, so I did anything that we could do to make money. So even when I was 12, 11 years old, I was buying stuff off the internet and selling it at school, and buying sweets and selling them at school, and then I was running multiple paper rounds. And then I wanted to, when I was making lots of money as a teenager, I got quite into fashion, and I was buying clothes and whatnot. And then I decided, well, actually what I want to do is own my own designer clothes shop. So that was kind of what I thought I wanted to do from about 14 years old. Started working in a designer clothes shop, and this was sort of real high-end designer clothes. And after a while, I thought, I'm going to own my own shop. And then I kind of had a moment where I realized, actually, that probably wasn't going to be possible for me. I need to do something else. Now, a lot of the clientele of this shop basically fit into one of four categories. They were either professional footballers, property developers, stockbrokers, or drug dealers. So I just thought, right, well, I need to become one of them. I need to become one of them. For what one can it be? And the first one I ruled out was being a professional footballer, because I'm rubbish at football. I'd played rugby all my life, but never football. The second one I ruled out was being a property developer, because I didn't have loads of money to develop property. So I was left with two options: become a stockbroker or become a drug dealer. And I would imagine, to my mother's delight, I didn't choose the drug dealer option.
Yeah.
And I decided to start working in financial services, and did that for many years. And what happened was, because at the time my belief was money equaled happiness, I was doing whatever I could to try and make more money. And that's where I stumbled across personal development. The more personal development I did, the more money I made. And that went on for some years until I ended up at the Tony Robbins event. And that was when I had the what I call my lightning moment.
What got you to go to the Tony Robbins event? Because that certainly is a whole lot different than the mindset that you clearly had been living with.
It was a friend, actually. A friend said to me, I'm thinking of going along to this event with this big American guy called Tony Robbins. Would you be up for coming? And I sort of checked out a few videos, and said, sure, I'm up for that. Looks like that'll be good.
And so you went, and the world changed.
Yeah, and life was never the same again.
So what did you do?
Well, So this is where the story unfolds. So I did eventually leave the city, and I set up a renewable energy business. So I set up that renewable energy business. We were growing rapidly. I mean, we went from a standing start to 85 staff within 18 months, growing. And then government changed legislation, and it pretty much killed that business overnight. And it was when I was away on holiday. So I took a holiday with my girlfriend at the time, and just to have a bit of a break and work out what we were going to do next and what was going to happen. And it was when I was away on holiday. It was a funny sort of event. So I'm a big believer that there are no coincidences, only synchronicities. And my girlfriend at the time, she was a dentist, or dental nurse, should I say. And she's like, "Will, we're going to go on holiday. You need to go and get your teeth cleaned by the hygienist." So we went to the hygienist, and unfortunately, she clipped my gum with the tool that she was using, and it got infected. Ooh. 2 days before the holiday, she said, "Will, I'm really sorry. You need to go on these particular antibiotics, and you're not going to be able to drink alcohol." Now, I don't drink alcohol now. I haven't drunk alcohol for coming up to probably 6 years, but back then I was a big drinker. I was a big binge drinker, and I was like, "I can't believe it. I'm about to go to the land of tequila. We were going to Mexico, and I'm not gonna be able to drink. This is crazy." So we ended up going on holiday, and I didn't drink, but we went to this nighttime entertainment venue called Coco Bongos, and it's kind of like a cross between a circus, a West End show, and a musical, all mixed in together. There's midgets flying from the ceiling and drag acts and all sorts of stuff going on. And my girlfriend at the time was throwing back tequila like it was nobody's business. Anyway, early hours of the morning, I carry her over my shoulder. I put her to bed. And I wake up in the morning, and she's got her head down the toilet and saying, "Will, I can't go out in the pool today." I said, "Well, look, my holiday, I haven't drunk all holiday. I'm definitely going to the pool." And I went to the pool with a book. And the book that I went with was a book called The Hero by Rhonda Byrne. Anyway, I'm reading through the book, and it gets to a particular part of the book where Rhonda talks about a guy called Mastin Kipp. And Mastin Kipp used to have or maybe he still does, have a website called The Daily Love. And he used to post motivational quotes on Twitter every day. And one day he got retweeted by Kim Kardashian. And then he went from 1,000 followers to 10,000 followers overnight. And I just started crying, because in that moment, what happened, Michael, was I realized that I'd left London because I didn't want to chase the money. I'd set up this renewable energy business, and then all I was still doing was chasing the money. And the thing that I really wanted to do, the thing that was in my heart, was helping people in the form of coaching them and working with them in some capacity like that. And I kept saying, "Well, I'll do it when I'm successful. When I'm successful." I call it when then syndrome. You know, people get so caught up with when this happens, then I'll do that. And I just decided what I need to do is just come home and start. And I can start by putting a motivational quote on Twitter every day and on social media. So I did. I started putting a motivational quote on Twitter and on Facebook and the platforms. I did one every day for a week, and I thought, "Will, you idiot. Some people don't go on social media in the morning. You should put one in the afternoon as well." So I did that. A week after that, I set up my own website. A week after that, I wrote my first blog. 3 months after that, I had a 10,000 strong social media following. So a very long-winded way of sort of sharing how I then made that transition from leaving London and then ended up finally pursuing what it was that I wanted to do.
And how long ago was that?
9 years.
Okay. So you finally really got to the point where you didn't worry as much about money, which certainly was a challenge to get to, but you thought about it. And I guess one of the questions that I have is what made you really think about the fact that money didn't need to be the only thing that drove you? Did you do a lot of introspection in your life at night, or did you think about it, or did it just sort of happen, or what?
It was the moment, it was the driver at the Tony Robbins event. So that lightning moment, as I referred to it, it just opened everything up. And I was like, no, my drive for money was actually linked to the fact that my dad didn't do certain things and we couldn't do certain things. So I thought, well, rather than me trying to just treat the symptom, which is just to pay for the things that dad couldn't sort for us, what about if he had been empowered? What if
Mhm.
there'd been somebody that could have given him the mindset that so that he could have done work that he loved? What if somebody gave him an abundance mindset so he didn't live in scarcity? What if there was somebody that could have been there for him so that he could have learned to handle his anger and it not impact the family in the way that it did? So everything that I do really now is kind of aimed at trying to help people that were once like my dad.
What um, happened along the way that caused you to really go into coaching as such? What made you think about that as what you wanted to do, as opposed to thinking about the fact that you're only successful if you make money, and that spiral just wasn't going anywhere? Well, if I make more, if I do this, then I'll be successful. And what caused you to really, well, I guess the Tony Robbins thing caused you to change that, but what made you decide to go into coaching, and how does that equate with the idea of success that you had?
Um, so in the moment, the Tony Robbins moment, I just instantly thought, no, my what I want to do is I want to become the world's best life coach. That's what I said back then. But actually, I then realized later on, that's what I said, but that's not what I meant. What I actually meant was that I just wanted to work with lots of people and help them achieve their potential. So that was what it was about. And I then saw, because I was literally standing in front of the guy, that, well, he's doing this. This is what he does for a living. So essentially, I modeled him. And then I went on and trained in a whole array of different mediums and modalities. And one of the things that I'd realized in my whole life that enabled me to have a sort of a decent amount of success, financial success, even at a young age as a teenager, was what I'd been doing my whole life without knowing what it was called, was modeling other people. So I was essentially modeling Tony. I saw what he was doing. I saw that he'd help me, and I wanted to look at doing things in a similar way. And that was what that came from.
Have you ever come to the conclusion, though, that ultimately you can model people only so much or so long, and that ultimately you have to do what you do, and maybe then people will, although that's not a desire necessarily, but then people will model you?
Absolutely, yeah. I believe that, so every single one of us on this planet, all 8 billion of us, or however many it is, have a completely unique fingerprint. Yeah, our fingerprint's completely unique. But what also is that's completely unique to us as individuals is our own genius. And our own genius is derived from our values. And every single person on the planet has a completely unique set of values. And they're unique in the sense that of the hierarchy that they're in. And it's from this, when we live in alignment with our values, we operate from inspiration, versus when we operate from somebody else's values, we operate and we require motivation. And one of the ways that I'll know if people are living their values or somebody else's, from the language they're using. So if they're using language like I need to, I ought to, I should, I have to, it's an indication they're living somebody else's values. When they're saying things like I love to, I desire, I choose to, they're living their own values. And if you take the word inspiration, in spirit, what's another word for spirit? Energy. You're in your energy. And a lot of people think they burn out because they're working too hard. They don't. They burn out because they're living somebody else's values.
Mm-hmm.
And that's now what I do myself, and what I help people do is identify what is their own unique hierarchy of values, so they can live that and turn that into a mission that then becomes what I call their North Star, that they live and work towards every single day, that enables them to wake up every day and feel more fulfilled and grow and contribute in the areas that are most meaningful to them.
So you have written a book.
I have indeed.
If you would, tell us about that.
Absolutely.
Always good to write a book, I say.
The book's called North Star Thinking: Master Your Mindset and Live a Life You Love.
Wow, what a title.
Thank you.
And so is it published? Is it out?
It's out. It's available. You can get it on Amazon and Waterstones, Barnes and Noble. It's on Audible as well, so it can be listened to on Spotify Premium. Yeah, so pretty much anywhere where you would normally get your books, you can go and grab a copy.
So how long has it been out?
It came out last year.
Okay. So what was the inspiration for writing it? What caused you to decide that you wanted to write a book to share your knowledge that way?
Well, there's a few things. I suppose one of them was it was a book that I read that was the first personal development book that I ever read, which was such a great catalyst for me. And I thought, well, there's a lot of stuff that I've done, and there's one of the things, Michael, that I've tried to do over the years is I've learned and consumed a huge amount of different resources and modalities, and I've got my own spin on things. One of the things that I try and do is take complex stuff and simplify it. So I took a range of different things, and there's four main pillars to the book. So North Star thinking is about essentially getting people to have a mission in life that's the equivalent of trying to empty the sea with a spoon. It's a mission in life that you continue to work towards, that you're fulfilled, that fulfills you every single day. You're working towards it. But the essence of the book is sort of North Star thinking, which is all around goal setting and purpose. Then it's around master your time, which is around essentially well, time. Then there's cultivating an attitude of gratitude and evolving your thinking. So using your thinking to gain different perspectives, and a smart way to do that. And then finally, habit creation. So they're the four main pillars of the book. And I think that for most people, if they can nail those four things, they've got the clarity of where they're going. They're taking the intelligent action in the sense that they are mastering their time, they're evolving their thinking, and they're doing things not just in terms of action, actual external action, but internal action. And then finally, they're creating the habits that create the lasting change. Then that puts a lot of people in good stead.
Why do you call it North Star thinking?
Well, there's a famous story you've probably heard of. It involves a baby born in a stable a couple of thousand years ago. And there were three men, supposedly wise, all carrying presents. And they followed the North Star. And they followed the North Star and they found this baby. Now, when I was reflecting on that story, I thought, well, that's really interesting. They never actually went to the North Star, or at least they didn't in the story that I heard. And it dawned on me that in their story, they used the North Star, they got to their goal. But so many people in life, what happens is they fall into what I call when-then syndrome, as I mentioned before, which is they set their sights on a goal, they achieve the goal, and then they just set another goal, and then they might achieve that goal, and then they achieve that, so they set another goal, and they achieve that. And after they've done that 4 or 5 times, if they're short-term goals, they find themselves actually becoming really quite unfulfilled. Like, why I keep doing all these short-term goals and I'm just unfulfilled? It's because they've generally attached a feeling of happiness or fulfillment or accomplishment to having got the goal. But the problem is that whenever you set a goal, if you've got that way of thinking all the time that the goal hasn't been achieved, then you're perceiving that you're not where you want to be, as opposed to so most people are focusing on the gap rather than the gain of the progress that they're making. So this way, it enables people to sort of stop that way of short-term thinking. I think of it like a pinball, going from one side of the table to the left, never really progressing forward, and then they can just they can focus on this overarching piece, and it enables people to become a lot more fulfilled and energized and accomplished as a result.
Well, yeah, and there is nothing wrong with setting goals and achieving a goal and going on, but you also kind of have to look at the overall where do you want to end up at some point, and maybe you don't. What do you think about that? Do you really want to have an ultimate goal and you use short goals to get there, or is that going too far?
Absolutely, that's the whole part of the process. So I call that component the North Star trajectory. So we start with where we are, we create the ultimate goal, that's the guiding light, and then we just reverse engineer that 10-year, 5-year, 20-year, 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, 1 year, 90-day, 30-day. We break the whole thing down. But of course, if you can imagine it, it's far wiser if you're here now and the North Star's directly in front of you. It's far wiser to go in a dead straight line. Now, look, I'm a realist. It's never a dead straight line. But if you jump in an aircraft to fly from London to New York or from New York to London, the pilot knows where he's going. He's going to set a trajectory. Now, sure, he may have to alter because of the wind, the weather, the flock of birds, or whatever it is that's coming towards them, but they're still going to follow that trajectory rather than go, hey, we're just going to take off south of London and then we're just going to kind of make it up as we go along. That's not going to be very good in terms of fuel efficiency. It's going to take far longer to get there. It can actually be a lot more dangerous because you might end up being somewhere where you run out of fuel or run out of energy and you can't carry on. So it's far wiser to do exactly what you've said, which is kind of know where you're going long term, but then break that down so you've got the milestones to work towards.
You talk about aligning your decisions with values and purpose. I'm assuming you do that in the book. And what does all that really mean? When you talk about aligning your decisions, I'm assuming in part that means that you do have values, you do have the things that you are made up from, and you really need to make your decisions go along with those, or you change your values and purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's about congruence. It's about congruence. So, for example, if somebody's goal is, I'm just going to use a very apt one at this time of year. If somebody's goal is that they want to lose weight and they want to lose weight and they want to get fitter, then a decision and action in terms of what they want to eat, if that's their goal and that's what they really want, then it's probably not going to be best that they have McDonald's breakfast for breakfast. They have Burger King for lunch and Domino's pizza for dinner. That making those food decisions would be, one would argue, would be incongruent with somebody's health and fitness goals if they were to eat that every day, if their goal is that they want to lose weight, body fat, and get fitter over the course of a 4 to 6 week period.
Mm-hmm. I was watching something on the news, I think just last week. Over here we have Costco. Do you have Costco in London?
We do. Yeah, we do indeed.
And somebody went into Costco and spent a whole week only eating Costco's hot dog meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and actually lost a little bit of weight, but he only did it for a week. Was inexpensive, but I got to believe that that's not something I would want to do.
Yeah, for sure.
There is something to be said for trying to align your eating habits with giving you the maximum amount of energy and eating healthy. But people do strange things sometimes. It got him on the news, so whatever. Yeah. Well, what about, so your idea of success has changed over time. What do you define success as today? What does it mean to be successful?
Well, it's a really great question, and I've even contemplated even changing that in recent weeks, because I will say that for me, my definition of success is people being, doing, and having what they desire. That for me is success, and of course, success is subjective. So people being, doing, and having what they desire is completely unique to them. But then I was re-listening to something called "The Strangest Secret" by Earl Nightingale a couple of weeks ago. I've listened to it many, many times before. But it shared his definition of success, which I really, really like, which is success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And that I really like. And I think it's very aligned with the whole concept of North Star thinking, because if somebody is a success because they're doing the work. So rather than having the end part, which is the having in be, do, and have, they are doing the work, and I really like that, because when we're taking on work, whatever that might be, whether it's health goals, relationship goals, business goals, financial goals, is that compounding can often have a big impact. Albert Einstein called compounding the eighth wonder of the world, and there's a huge amount of work that has to go into building the foundations. You look at houses that get built, if you've got a new house that's being built for 6 months, there might look like it's just a building site, but there's all of the infrastructure that's going in, the sewage and the water pipes and all of those things. And then one day, all of a sudden, almost out of nowhere, you're going 6 months, 9 months of it looking like a building site, and look like they're not doing anything. And then in the space of like 3 weeks, a whole house has been built. Well, it had all been happening the whole time, but it just looked slower and then you only see the end goal part. And that's the thing I think is really important. There's so many people in today's day and age, due to, I guess, social media having an impact and so many of us wanting instant gratification, is that they get frustrated with the process. And it's easier now than ever to compare your chapter 2 to somebody else's chapter 20. And that's what happens so often.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to hear people talk about success, and to just ask people about it. And they talk about, well, I got to make a lot of money. I've got to be independently wealthy and things like that. And I admit some of that would be nice, but it's not the ultimate thing that's going to make me happy. At least I think for me, and I think about the things that you've been saying for the last half hour. I grew up wanting to teach, and I always thought I wanted to be a teacher. And then along the way, I got very interested in science, so I wanted to be a physics teacher. Well, as things settled down and progressed, I ended up not being a physics teacher, but I do believe that in a lot of ways, there's no question that I get the opportunity to teach. As a salesperson for many years, I learned from the Dale Carnegie sales course that the best salespeople are really counselors. They're teachers. They guide people to look at products. And I'm not above telling somebody that a product I'm selling may not fit their specific need. But if I'm honest enough to do that, I believe that comes back to affect me in a very positive way. And there are several instances where I and my staff would tell people, our product isn't going to work for you. But then later we get a call from the company saying, we really like what you had to say. We've got another project and we really appreciate all you taught us. We know your product will work. Just give us a price and we'll order it right today. I'm not sure that'll happen today in the world where we're so stuck in doing things by committee, but it worked 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Mm. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said. I mean, sales, when I think, look, let's face it, sales, there's nothing that's ever really been accomplished at great scale without salespeople. And yeah, look, salespeople get a bad rap in a lot of instances, but if they've got integrity, then they can do a lot of good for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, there is the other side of it. And sometimes salespeople deserve a bad rap for what they do. And they don't really understand the true science and art that sales is and what it gives you the opportunity to do. But when it's done well and it's done right, it really will make and does make a big difference in the lives of so many people, because you provide what it is that somebody needs, and you do that. And that's a wonderful tribute to accomplishment, which is also part of success. Yeah, you get paid and all that, and that's great, but there's a whole lot more to it than just money.
Yeah, for sure.
I do like money. I think there's a lot of merit to having that. That's okay. But by the same token, it's not the only thing in the world, but it's part of what we have to deal with. So you talk about resilience. Tell me a little bit more about your thoughts about resilience and how that plays into the book, and how it plays into you and your life.
So I have an interesting stance on resilience. So first of all, I think that anybody that has an ability to go through tough times, when they have to, resilience is a phenomenal attribute to have. I really, really do. My concern that I see now is that people are wearing resilience almost like a badge. And it's a bit like busy. People wear busy like a badge. Oh, I'm so busy, like thinking it's a good thing, they're proud of it. Or I'm so resilient. I've handled this and this and this, and it's the whole, like, what would you rather? Would you rather work smart, or would you rather work hard? Would you rather not have to be resilient because you were wise enough to overcome the challenge before it happened? Now, don't get me wrong, having certain skill sets to be resilient is so important. I've had some really challenging times in my life, but I'm a big believer that if something is chronically happening, so it's happening over and over and over again, and you're constantly having to find yourself being resilient, if it's the same problem showing up, then let's just treat the cause so the symptoms go, so that you don't have to be resilient if it's the same problem coming up over and over again. But yeah, look, I think resilience is a combination of a mindset. I also think it's a combination of a skill set that enables people to deal with various things, and a huge amount of that mindset is down to perspective. Whether somebody believes that something is happening to them, i.e., they're the victim, or whether they believe it's happening for them. And I think that the moment you change your perspective on life, that this life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me, and it's not in the way, it's on the way, that can completely alter your life by having that perspective. And in the same way that the moment you change your I've got to's to I get to, life changes.
It does.
There are people today that haven't had the privilege of experiencing today because they didn't wake up this morning. Yet there's still people that have woken up and gone, oh, I've got to go to work today. Oh, I've got to do this. But there are people that would have done anything to have had today to be able to do that. And I think sometimes we all get can get carried away with not sort of maximizing the things that we can get grateful for, especially the privileges that we have on a daily basis.
I have had jobs in my life that I didn't really like for one reason or another. And when things got to the point where it seemed like it was intolerable, then I had to make some choices and decisions about whether to stay or go find another job, which could be difficult for blind people, especially because the unemployment rate is so high because people think we can't work. But I would have been very blessed to be able to find jobs. But I think that's in part because my choice was to live life and get to live life and not have to live life, which is what you're saying. And so when there got to be enough of a challenge, then my job was to go deal with it. And I think that's part of the whole issue of resilience. We really get ourselves locked into a mindset so much as a people that we don't look for options, we don't look for opportunities, and sometimes we don't look for the good parts of a job that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's also part of what we have to do. And I think that we all can make life better for ourselves. I remember after September 11th and everything that happened that day, within a very short time, like just a few days, we were getting a lot of requests for interviews. And my wife and I talked about it. And she said, do you really want to do these interviews? And I said, here's my thought. If I can help people move on from September 11th, if I can teach people about blindness and guide dogs, and if I can help people see maybe things in a different sense, then maybe it's worth doing. And we agreed, and it had to be both of us agreeing that we would do that. And then people started calling and saying, would you come and talk to us? And as I love to tell people, I made the decision that selling computer hardware wasn't nearly as much fun and wasn't as rewarding as selling life and philosophy. And I think that now, 22 and a half years later, I still believe that. I think that it's so very important that we look at outlooks. And I've learned a lot. I've got the opportunity with this podcast to learn so much in talking to people. It's such a blessing to hear from so many people and be able to synthesize all the things that they say. It's really a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know that firsthand.
Absolutely. I do indeed.
I'm sorry?
I do indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it firsthand.
Tell me your thoughts about reflection and introspection and so on. From my perspective, I think it's important that we take time every day to do that. Tell me what your thoughts are about that.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I have a practice that I use on a daily basis, and I'll journal. So I'll journal what time I wake up. I'll journal how I feel when I wake up, and anything obvious that I might think of why I feel that way. So if I've woken up and I feel really groggy, it's like, well, it's because you went to bed late last night, or you'd eaten loads of sugar, or whatever it might be. Then I write out 10 things I'm grateful for. And what I do when I'm doing the 10 things I'm grateful for, I actually think of the previous 24 hours and I look from a couple of each of these areas. So I think of the people that I'm grateful for. Then I think of the experiences that I had. Then I think of my belongings. So what belongings am I grateful for? I don't know, for example, I'm grateful for my laptop because it enabled me to do this interview with you, Michael, as an example. Then I think of these other two areas are the big ones, which is expectations and privileges. So what my expectations? Well, I had an expectation that the internet was going to work today for me to be able to do this interview. Well, I'm glad that it worked.
Mm-hmm.
A privilege that I've got today, right now, as I sit in this house, it's warm. You know, I've got heating. I'm privileged. There are people right now that are sleeping out on the streets. There are people that have not got heating. So yeah, there's a whole array of different things that I look at and reflect on a daily basis to keep me focused on what's going well. Because no matter what's gone on in my day, no matter how bad it is, there are always at least 10 things that I can find to be able to count my blessings, and where focus goes, energy flows. So I'm constantly giving myself the reinforcement that there's some great stuff going on to keep me in a great state and keep that level of perspective.
So, you bring up things like the fact that there are people in the world who are cold, who don't have a lot of heat and so on. But you also know that you alone aren't going to solve all those problems. And, but I assume that you think about it and it kind of weighs on you. How do you really address that? Because you can't solve everybody's problems. What do you do without sounding cold, if you will, or unfeeling to deal with that?
There's a great story, and it was a man who was walking along a beach. I'm going to paraphrase this slightly, but he was walking along a beach, and as he was walking down the beach, he saw he saw a small boy, and as he got closer, he saw that the small boy was throwing starfish back into the sea, and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these starfish all washed up on the ocean. And the man said to the little boy, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm throwing the starfish back in the sea." He said, "There's so many of them, you can't make a difference." And he picked up another starfish and he threw it into the sea. And he said, "Well, I made a difference to that one."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people in general are doing the best they can with the resources they have. And yeah, sure, there's lots of things I would love to be able to do more of. But when I sit back and I reflect at the end of the day, I go, did I do the best I could with the resources I had? And if I can honestly answer yes to that, then I'm okay with that.
And that's the real key, is that, are you doing the best that you can do? And if you think about that every day, and then you think about, what else can I do to make the best better, if anything? And you can either say, well, I can do this, or I really am doing the best that I can do. That's as good as it gets. But the key is to really look at it and to think about it and to consciously make that decision, which is something that all too often we just don't do collectively. We don't really take that step back, or too many of us don't take that step back. How do we teach people to be more introspective in their lives?
A daily reflection exercise, I think, is a good one. Just even asking that question: did I do the best I can with the resources I had today? And I also think, I mean, this is really getting on my soapbox, is that I think a huge part of this comes down to how we've been conditioned from schooling, because we are graded in school on achievement, not effort. So, for example, if you had an A-star student that gets a B because they didn't put any effort in, but then you have a D grade student who does everything they can and they get a D, why is the person that got a B still classed as better, quote unquote? So I think that if we condition people on effort, and we trained people and educated people on the effort that they put in, then even asking that simple question, did I do everything I could? Was there any more that I possibly could have done? If the answer is yes, then great, do that thing. If the answer is no, then great, be at peace with whatever the outcome is.
And that's really it. And we each have to answer that for ourselves. I love to say, I used to say I'm my own worst critic. When I always love to talk about the fact that when I give a speech, I record it and I go listen to it. And I used to say I do that because I'm my own worst critic. And I realized last year, actually, wrong way to put it, wrong way to think about it. And I've realized that the best thing for me to say is I'm my own best teacher, because ultimately only I can teach me to do stuff, but it's so much more positive. And it also makes it a lot easier to go listen to the speeches and so on that I record, because I know that if there's something to learn, I'll pick it up.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And also, I would argue that a critique generally is going to look at the what the negative stuff is, but a teacher is going to acknowledge the things that went well and the things that could be improved. So that subtle nuance can make such a difference.
Yeah, we often just talk about failure, and I'm not of the opinion that failure is a good word anyway. I do think that failure is an opportunity to do better. All right. So it didn't go right today. Why? And what do we do to address it in the future? Not, it's a failure, I screwed up, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, failure definitely is. Well, the biggest thing with failure is that people make it an identity, don't they? You know, rather than, okay, yeah, I failed, it didn't work out. Well, I've learned, and but people, they fail and they go, well, I'm a failure. The two most powerful words in the English language are I am. Yet, what I think people are better to do is sort of think more like a scientist, because what do scientists do? They do experiments and they go, right, well, I've experimented with this. They don't go, oh no, my experiment failed. They go, oh, that's interesting. That one didn't work. Let's try this time.
Yeah.
So if we took more of a scientific approach and looked at everything as an experiment, then we would look at it in a very different light.
And the experiment didn't necessarily fail. It didn't fail. It really is an issue of what went wrong in terms of what were my assumptions. What do I need to change?
Absolutely. It's the whole famous Thomas Edison quote, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I've never failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that didn't work, or whatever it is.
Right. You were talking before about how people just always do the same thing over and over again, which goes back to Einstein's, if we believe that definition of insanity, which is you expect something different, even though you do the same thing every time.
Yeah.
And it just isn't that way. We have to hold, more than anything else, it seems to me, we have to hold ourselves accountable for what we do. And we should always deal with accountability. I've been a great believer in teamwork, and even in a team where you have a number of people, it's the greatest value if the team members feel empowered to be able to hold each other accountable for whatever their commitments are, whatever they contribute to the team. There's nothing wrong with accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And especially within ourselves, we need to hold ourselves accountable to ourselves, and we need to define that and think about it so that we do the right things to improve.
Completely agree.
So how have you approached, especially since you started being an entrepreneur and a coach and so on, how do you approach the whole idea of goal setting and what people should do for creating goals?
So I believe that the most effective thing that people can do is they create their North Star, which is identifying this mission in life that's the equivalent of trying to empty the spoon. It's the one thing that they strive towards every single day. Then they reverse engineer it. So 20-year, 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, 1 year, 90-day, 30-day goals. So then they've got that full milestone. That for me is what I found to be the most effective way of doing it. That gives people clarity and confidence in what it is that they're working towards.
Well, yeah. Goal setting is such a ubiquitous, ambiguous thing sometimes. Well, I got to set different goals. Well, really? What does that really mean? And all too often, again, we really don't understand what the nature of goal setting is about. And it is... Go ahead.
I was going to say, ultimately, any goal that anyone ever sets is to do one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Change the way they feel.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Ultimately, any goal is about people wanting to change the way they feel. Now, what's great is that you have an ability to really do that in any given moment. But that's the first thing. But the second thing that's one of the most amazing things about setting goals, well set goals, is the person you become as a result of working towards it.
Interesting way to put it. And I buy that. I accept that. Because ultimately, when you set a goal and you achieve it, there are feelings that go along with it. There are things that affect you, and that's the way it should be.
Mm-hmm.
How about self-limiting beliefs? We all often limit our own selves because we think we can't do something or that this is impossible to do. But, self-limiting beliefs, it seems to me, is a whole concept that we need to address and change our own thinking about, because it is what limits us. It is what holds us back all too often.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, first of all, a belief is just a feeling of certainty about what something means. And if you take the word belief, there's another big word that sits inside it, which is lie. And most beliefs are lies. And what's happened is that people have created the reinforcement to a belief, which is their way, their evidence, if you like, of why that belief is so. And what it sometimes takes is a different perspective to see that isn't the case. So the way that we do that is by introducing doubt, and that's the beauty of working with a coach when you've got these beliefs, because some people don't even realize that they're limiting them. They don't see it. They physically can't see it, in the same way that I think of, like, the fish doesn't see the water. They're just in the water. And it's the same when it comes to these things. You can't see the whole picture when you're in the frame. And one of the key metrics of identifying, well, have I got limiting beliefs and whatnot, is from the language you use, but also, are we actually achieving what it is that we want to be achieving, what it is that we want to be working towards? So if we're not, and we're coming up with all the reasons or excuses as to why that isn't done, then that's a way of uncovering what some of those limiting beliefs are as well.
Yeah. And I had never actually heard that, but I love it. Belief has lie in it, and that makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
And we need to always examine our beliefs and our perceptions. I know I talk a lot to various people about blindness, and the society we live in has such limiting beliefs about what a blind person can and can't do. And that results in large part to the unemployment rate of between 65 and 70% of employable blind people in this country, because not that they are not able to or that they're unable to do things, but people think they are. And so we never get the opportunity. And we have to ourselves push through that. And it does start with us to recognize, all right, so I don't see, but the problem is that sighted people do see, and there are a lot of challenges with eyesight. But the bottom line is that we shouldn't buy into the beliefs that tend to try to limit us either.
Absolutely not.
You talk about gratitude, and I think that's an extremely important thing. I believe we all ought to be a whole lot more grateful and live a life of gratitude. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so for me, gratitude is something that most of us have been brought up, and when you think of the word, what's the word gratitude that people associate most of the time? Well, they're going to say thank you. You guys on the other side of the pond, you of course have Thanksgiving every year, an opportunity to give thanks. But where most people get gratitude wrong is they only ever think about being grateful for what's going well. They don't find the blessings when things aren't going so well. So obviously you've got the famous yin yang symbol. So you've got the little black dot in the white side and the white dot in the black side. And it's about creating balance and seeing that in any given moment, no matter what's happening, it's perfect, but it's having an ability to see the divine perfection in any given moment, no matter how bad we may perceive it in the initial stages. And that's the part where gratitude really becomes powerful, because most people, they live in a state of either moving away from something out of desperation or moving towards something in sort of pain or pleasure. That's kind of how they're operating, and both of those are essentially lower forms of lower level living. Essentially, you're moving in pain and pleasure. Pain and pleasure is born out of the amygdala, the reptilian part of the brain. Whereas what we can do is we can use our higher level thinking. We can use our prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of the brain, where we can create perspective, where we can choose to see a different side, and that can bring us back into balance. And that's really where that's really where we can find gratitude. In fact, there's a part of the brain called the corpus callosum. It sits in between the left and right and left hand hemispheres of the brain. And what they do is they balance out the brain, the left and right hand hemispheres. Now, when it's doing that and it's creating that balance in the brain, it's creating equilibrium. And the Latin translation of corpus callosum means human tough. And that's what gratitude does. It enables you to become a tough human. When you can see the good in the bad and the bad in the good, because let's face it, nothing is good and nothing is bad. Nothing is hot, nothing is cold. Nothing is positive and nothing is negative. It's all a matter of perspective. And when we can choose to see that, we can completely alter how we feel about any situation, no matter how bad.
What do you teach people about dealing with fear? Fear is something that's all around us, and everybody talks so much about being afraid. And I know a lot of that has to do with not stepping out of your comfort zone and being afraid to do it. But tell me a little bit about fear and your thoughts about that.
Yeah, look, let's face it, fear is there to serve a purpose. And I don't think fear is all bad. So many people put fear in this category as, oh, you should never be you should be completely fearless and whatever. Sometimes fear is there to serve us, otherwise we would have evolved out of it, and we haven't, because fear is basically what's kept the human race alive for however many thousands of years. So I don't think fear is all bad, but I do think we're wise to question it from time to time. And there will be times when we are fearing things because we're in our amygdala, we're not using the rational part of the brain to think, and that a lot of that can come down to people getting caught up in the possibility of something. So I talk about the distinction between possibility and probability. And a lot of people might get fearful because they fear something that could possibly happen. Well, yeah, it might possibly happen, but there's a big difference between the possibility of it happening and the probability of it happening. And when you make that distinction, you open your mind up to be able to look at other things.
And usually what we're afraid of that might happen doesn't.
Often it doesn't.
And that's the big problem, is that we create a lot of our own fears. And the fact is, I think we can learn to control fear and use fear in the very positive sense that you just talked about. Because all too often we just let fear, as I put it, blind us or paralyze us, and we can't decide, we can't move forward. But the reality is we can learn to move forward and use that fear in a very positive way if we would.
Absolutely.
So it is part of the challenge that we face, but I believe that the fear is something that that God gave us that we need to learn to use and not fear, which goes back to Franklin Roosevelt. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. What a very profound statement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. We've been doing this an hour. Can you believe it?
Wow. Time flies when you're having fun.
I know. This has been great, and I really appreciate you being here with us, and I want to thank you for it all. If people want to reach out and contact you and maybe use your coaching services and so on, how do they do that?
I mean, if you Google me or look on social media anywhere, Will Polston, that's kind of the best place. You can go on Google or social media or anywhere. Feel free, please do reach out. If you found this
Will
podcast,
Will Polston is spelled
WILLTOL, so Papa Oscar Lima, POLSTON, Sierra Tango Oscar November.
He's using the latest version of the phonetic alphabet. That's a good thing. Well, I want to thank you for being here. And I want to thank you all for listening to us today. This has been fun. Hope that you found it enjoyable. Love to hear your thoughts. And I would really appreciate it if you'd give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to us or watching us podcast wise. We value your thoughts and we value your ratings. If you'd like to reach out to me, feel free to do so. You can reach me at michaelhi@accessibe.com. That's michaelhi@accessibe.com, or go to our podcast page, www.michaelhinkson.com/podcast. And Michael Hinkson is MichaelHingson. But we really value your involvement and input in the podcast. We do this so that we get the opportunity to provide you with information and help, which is what Will and I have been talking about for the last hour. So please give us your thoughts whenever you can. And we appreciate it if you'd be back next time to hear another episode of Unstoppable Mindset. And Will, once again, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.